Next up in my series of top 10 NHL players from all of the recent NHL drafts, we are at the 2014 draft, and this was an interesting draft. A lot of the top 10, weren't the greatest picks, but all throughout the draft, there was some really good players, in some of the later rounds and in the late first round as well, and we're going to see that a little later on when going through this video. So I'm going to start off by showing you guys the original 2014 top 10. Aaron Ekblad was the first overall pick by the Florida Panthers, and I don't really think they regret that because he is an important part of their blue line. Sam Reinhart, number 2 overall to Buffalo. He's starting to really come into his own now. Leon Draisaitl, number 3, obviously an amazing player. Had a 100-point season last year, 50 goals. He's unreal. Sam Bennett, number 4. Michael Dal at number 5. Jake Virtanen at number 6. Hayden Fleury at number 7 to Carolina. William Nylander, number 8 to Toronto. And Nick Ehlers, number 9 to Winnipeg. And finally, at number 10, Nick Ritchie to the Anaheim Ducks. So overall, like I said, it was an interesting top 10. But now let's just get into the top 10 players from the 2014 NHL draft. So starting off at number 10, I have Nick Schmaltz. He was originally drafted by the Chicago Blackhawks in the first round, 20th overall, but now obviously is a member of the Arizona Coyotes in the Dylan Strome trade. He's a 23-year-old centerman. He's played in 179 career games, 34 goals, and 71 assists for 105 points. This past season struggled with injury a little bit, but after the trade and in the few games he played with Arizona, he was fantastic, and I think he's in for a very solid season next year. 40 games played, 7 goals and 18 assists for 25 points. And to me, at the number 10 spot, I was debating between going Kevin Labanc or Nick Schmaltz. I decided to go with Nick Schmaltz just because I feel like Kevin Labanc was in a little bit easier situation to put up better numbers than Nick Schmaltz. But I think overall, if a lot of people had to pick between the two who they'd rather have, that a lot of people would choose Nick Schmaltz. I think he's an underrated player, and like I said, I definitely think he can really have a breakout season next year and maybe be up there around 60 to 70 points. Hopefully for Arizona, because they definitely do need some more help on the offensive side of things. Getting a guy like Phil Kessel will help, and then obviously having a fully healthy Nick Schmaltz should help that case as well. Next up, at the number 9 spot, I have Sam Reinhart from the Buffalo Sabres. He was originally the 2nd overall pick in the draft, but I think he really has the potential to climb up this list, especially if he continues to play, throughout his career like he did last season. He's a 23-year-old centerman, has played in 331 career games, 87 goals, and 118 assists for 205 points. Like I said, he finally came into his own and had that breakout season this year. 82 games played, 22 goals, and 43 assists for 65 points. Obviously, it is a little bit easier for him to put up numbers now playing with like Jack Eichel and Jeff Skinner, which is a very solid line, but I think we have to give a lot of credit to Sam Reinhart. He kept working hard, and some people even labeled him as a bust. Obviously, at the number 2 pick, a little bit steep for him, but he definitely is a very solid NHL player and is going to be a huge part of the Buffalo Sabres future. So I like Sam Reinhart. I think if he continues to get better, he will continue to climb up this list, but for right now, I have him at the number 9 spot. Next up, at the number 8 spot, I have Aaron Ekblad from the Florida Panthers, originally the 1st overall pick in this draft. I know it says just drafted in round 1 there. I don't know why I forgot to put pick 1, but nonetheless, he was the 1st overall pick. He's a 23-year-old defenseman, has played in 391 career games, 66 goals, and 105 assists for 171 points. This past season, 82 games played, 13 goals, and 25 assists for 37 points. And in my opinion, Aaron Ekblad has just been really up and down and kind of inconsistent throughout his career so far. His career high in points came in his rookie season, and I really do think he needs to take that next step next year and really solidify himself as the number 1, two-way defenseman for this Florida team next year if they want to make that jump into the playoffs. He's definitely an important piece for this team, and just because I have him ranked at number 8, I wouldn't say he's a bust with the number 1 overall pick, because he is still an important piece for Florida. They're going to need him to play well if they want to continue to get better, but I just think he's been really up and down so far, but definitely has the potential to climb up this list. But for right now, I think just strictly because he's been so inconsistent and up and down through his career, I have him at the number 8 spot. Next up, at the number 7 spot, I have William Nylander from the Toronto Maple Leafs. He was originally the 8th overall pick in this draft, and I think Toronto is happy with getting Nylander that late. He's a 23-year-old winger, had a really up and down last season, obviously, with the contract holdout, and then when he did get the contract signed, he didn't really play the greatest, but I think, if he can really get back to playing a consistent top 6 role, especially on a line with a guy like Austin Matthews, he can, get back to that 60-point scorer that he was for the previous 2 seasons before the contract holdout. But nonetheless, 239 career games played, 55 goals, and 107 assists for 162 points. This past season, 54 games played, 7 goals, and 20 assists for 27 points. And in my opinion, if Toronto does, want to continue to improve and finally go deep into the playoffs, they're going to need that William Nylander from 2 years ago ago when he was a 60-point scorer, and if he can stay healthy, and obviously if he plays in all the games this year, I think he will get back to that because he's very talented. We saw him light it up at the World Championships, and I think that was really big for his confidence, so I think we should be in for a really good bounce back year from William Nylander next season. Next up, at the number 6 spot, I have Nikolaj Ehlers from the Winnipeg Jets. Now, it was honestly pretty tough deciding between Nylander and Ehlers on who I wanted to put in front of the other. I decided to give the edge to Nikolaj Ehlers, and I kind of just based it off of last season, even though that was pretty tough still because Nikolaj Ehlers didn't really have the greatest year this past season. He was originally the 9th overall pick in the 2014 draft, and I think Winnipeg has to be pretty pumped getting a guy of Nick Ehlers' caliber at the number 9 spot. He's a 23-year-old left winger, has played in 298 career games, 90 goals, and 109 assists for 199 points. And then this past season, like I said, wasn't the greatest year for him, only played in 62 games, had an injury, 21 goals, 16 assists for 37 points. When healthy, in my opinion, he can be a consistent 30-goal scorer and a guy who can give you 60 to 70 points. He's just super fast and unstoppable when he gets ahead of steam going through the neutral zone. He's a really dynamic forward, and I wouldn't worry about Nick Ehlers in the slightest just because of one down year, and I think next year we're going to see him get back to that player who can give you 60 to 70 points on a pretty consistent basis. Next up, at number 5, I have Viktor Arvidsson from the Nashville Predators. He's one of the 2 huge steals in this draft that made it into my top 10. He was originally a 4th round pick, 112th overall by the Nashville Predators. A big reason why he slid so late in the draft was because he was an older player. Most guys right now from this draft class are like 23 and some are even 22 years old. But Viktor Arvidsson, he's 26, but I think Nashville is still super pumped getting a guy, the caliber of Viktor Arvidsson so late in the draft. He's a right winger, has played in 278 career games, 102 goals, and 84 assists for 186 points. He's just a pure goal scorer, and in my opinion, he's one of the more underrated goal scorers in the entire league. He only played in 58 games last year and had 34 goals. If he stayed healthy and played in all 82, he could have been up there around 45, maybe even 50 goals, only 14 assists, but Viktor Arvidsson is just a pure goal scorer, and I have him so high on this list just because I'm super high on him. I just think what he brings to the table for Nashville is just super underrated, and like I said, Nashville has to be super pumped getting Viktor Arvidsson in the 4th round of this draft. Next up, at number 4, we have my current favorite player in the league, Dylan Larkin from the Detroit Red Wings. I'm super pumped about this because without Larkin, I honestly don't know where the team would be right now. He was originally the 15th overall pick in the 1st round by the Red Wings. He's still only 22 years old. I believe he turns 23 at the end of this month. He's a centerman. He's played in 318 career games, 88 goals, and 125 assists for 213 points. This past season was the first year where he really showed that he can be, an elite point producer as well as a great two-way forward and leader for this Red Wings team. 76 games played, 32 goals, which was a career high, 41 assists for a total of 73 points, also a career high, the first time he's ever hit 73 points. And in my opinion, if he can stay healthy all season next year, he can be up there around a point per game, and that isn't even what impresses me so much about Dylan Larkin. Is just he's very defensively responsible as a centerman who is only 22 years old, so I just think the future is super bright for him. He's also on a pretty team-friendly contract, which I'm pretty pumped about just because you see so many players just getting paid these days, and I think that helps Detroit a lot considering they have so many bad contracts. I'm just super pumped with the player that he's became since he's been drafted, and that's why I have him at the number 4 spot. Next up, at the number 3 spot, I have Brayden Point from the Tampa Bay Lightning. He was originally a 3rd round pick, 79th overall in the 2014 draft. Considering what Brayden Point is capable of, that is an absolute steal for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and this was really his first, explosive year where he took that next leap into stardom. So I was debating on putting Larkin ahead of him, but I decided to give Brayden Point the edge just because he has shown an explosive scoring ability that I don't really think Dylan Larkin is capable of, and I ultimately think Brayden Point will be the better player when their careers come to an end. He's a 23-year-old centerman, has played in 229 career games, 91 goals, and 107 assists for 198 points. This past season, 79 games played, 41 goals, 51 assists for 92 points. Obviously, he does get a lot of points because he plays with so many talented guys, but if you really watch him, he creates a lot of offense for himself and for others, and I just think he is an amazing player and, potentially could be one of the best centermen in the NHL in just a couple of years, so that is why I have Brayden Point at the number 3 spot. Next up, at number 2, I have David Pastrnak from the Boston Bruins. He's a 23-year-old right winger. He was originally the 25th overall pick in the 2014 draft. He's just been a scoring machine ever since coming on and being a full-time member of the Bruins. 320 games played, 132 goals, 152 assists for 284 points. This past season, he was amazing in the games that he played. Had an injury, so he wasn't able to play all 82, but if he did, he could have been up there and maybe even been teetering around 100 total points. 66 games played for him, 38 goals, and 43 assists for 81 points. I think next year we're going to see an explosive year from David Pastrnak. I think he's capable of being a 50 goal scorer and a 100 point guy, and I just think Boston has to be super pumped with getting a guy like that who's really a franchise player. He has been a massive part of why Boston has consistently been so good for so many years, so that is why I have David Pastrnak at number 2. And now finally, at the number 1 spot, I'm sure everyone knew this is who it was going to be. Leon Draisaitl from the Edmonton Oilers, originally the 3rd overall pick in the 2014 draft, and he has just been amazing for Edmonton. You know, they haven't done the greatest job developing their draft picks, but Leon Draisaitl and obviously Connor McDavid have been exceptions to that. 23 years old, centerman, 351 career games played, 125 goals, 187 assists for 312 points, and this year he showed, just an explosive scoring ability that I didn't really think anyone knew he was capable of. I mean, I didn't ever expect Leon Draisaitl to just jump up and become a 100-point scorer, but that is exactly what he did, and I think he has to continue to be, not even 100 points on a consistent basis, but up there around that, 90 plus for sure for Edmonton, even try to make that leap into the playoffs. This past season, 82 games played, 50 goals, and 55 assists for 105 points. He's obviously playing behind Connor McDavid, but I think if those two play on a line for a full season, there is no telling what their point totals could be. Now it is just a matter of Edmonton being able to put the talent around Draisaitl and McDavid for them to be a legit contender and obviously a playoff team, but you can't fault Leon Draisaitl for the failures of the team over the past couple of years because he has been an amazing player, and I don't really think there is any argument against him being the number 1 player from this draft. So now finishing off the video with taking a look at how the top 10 would have unfolded if my rankings are actually how it went. Leon Draisaitl would have went number 1 to the Florida Panthers. Could you imagine Draisaitl playing with Barkov? That would be a pretty amazing 1-2 punch. David Pastrnak would have went number 2 to Buffalo. Edmonton would still be getting a very solid centerman at number 3 with Brayden Point. Dylan Larkin would go 4 to the Calgary Flames. Viktor Arvidsson would go number 5 to the New York Islanders. Nick Ehlers number 6 to the Canucks. William Nylander number 7 to the Carolina Hurricanes. Aaron Ekblad number 8 to the Leafs. That would be a pretty good fit. Sam Reinhart number 9 to the Jets, and Nick Schmaltz number 10 to the Anaheim Ducks. So all in all, I think this draft as a whole was really solid, even though some of the players that were actually drafted in the top 10 are yet to really develop into real good NHL players. I think the players that were selected in, the late first round and even some of the later rounds kind of made up for that. So like I said, I think this was a really, really solid draft. So that is going to wrap up today's video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. Make sure to let me know down in the comment section what your top 10 players from this draft would look like and what draft you guys want me to do this on next. And with that being said, I hope you guys all enjoyed today's video. If you did, please make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content, and I will see you guys all in the next video.